Welcome to another edition of the Litigation Psychology Podcast, brought to you by Courtroom Sciences. This is Dr. Bill Kanasky. My guest today, dear friend, client, and my Alaska travel agent / advisor, Brenda Smith from the Dvorak Law Firm in Omaha, Nebraska. Brenda, how are you?
Doing well. Good morning.
Okay, so I'm going right on my rant that you just created for me over the last 15 minutes about so it took us about 15 minutes to get counsel logged on to the podcast. What is going on with the Dvorak IT department? Or is it the equipment? Was this operator error? What was the final diagnosis on your Zoom issues this morning?
I think it was Zoom. I was on Zoom this morning. It was working fine, but I'll take ownership of it. User error, not sure, just happy to be here.
Pivoting like a bad witness. See, have you not sat in on any of the, like, are you paying attention to me when I'm working with witnesses?
Mm-hmm.
Going right off on a tangent. By the way, you notice what I'm drinking from?
Very nice.
The Dvorak Yeti that was stolen from me. It was a gift by you and your firm after I gave a CLE. I fell in love with it. Of course, when I get back with my bag of goodies, the family just stole it. Didn't see it for 2 months, and now I've got it back. So I figured it was most appropriate to drink my coffee this morning from the Yeti.
Absolutely. Glad to see you found it again.
And the big one you gave me, that's my work. That's the one I fill with my nutrition drinks, and I take that to the gym. This day's cold. I'm still waiting for the Dvorak polo, maybe the hoodie.
Come back.
We have to talk to the Daves on that one.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. Now, but being in Omaha is a big deal this time of year. I sent you a TikTok link right before we got on. I gotta tell you, Matt Rule, listen, that the inside of the new Nebraska locker room is pretty badass. What do you think of that?
Absolutely. Very cool. We're excited for the new season, new start. We just hope to be relevant again. So our expectations have been adjusted and we're looking forward to the new season.
Well, listen, Rule is a rebuilder. He did it at Baylor. He's gonna do it there. Yeah, you kicked Scott Frost to the curb, and new season. Now I have to, of course, put you on the spot immediately in this podcast. I went right to Caesar's Palace Sportsbook to look up the under. Okay, 12 games this year, not including a bowl game. 12 games. They have Nebraska the under over for wins at 6.5. Brenda Smith, are you taking Nebraska under or over the spread? That's 6.5.
Over.
You're going over?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, but you did not hesitate on that. What gives you the confidence that Nebraska is going to get back into just respectability? Not talking national, presence, or just respectability. What do you think?
New coach, buy-in. There's a lot of excitement, and we got to be optimistic, right? It's been a rough 20 plus years. Turning the page, new start. I'm taking the over.
Well, that is a confident bet. And I'm looking at the schedule right now. September 30, hosting number 2 Michigan without Jim Harbaugh because that dirtbag has been suspended. Are we thinking upset with the Michigan, or is that just a little too early for that?
I want to give a resounding, of course, but I think we have to be cautiously optimistic. We'll see.
I will be pulling for the Cornhuskers in that game.
Fantastic. Wear your Husker gear.
Hey, absolutely. I need more Husker gear. So when I come back into town, I got to get particularly if they hit the over, you may be sending me Husker gear.
That's right.
All right. We have a lot to cover today. Today's topic is really important. You and I are very active in transportation litigation, and we had a case recently that we're going to talk about. But I want to just start kind of more generally on this topic, and then I want to learn a little bit. Want the audience to learn a little bit more about you and the firm. But preparing drivers, truck drivers for deposition is no easy task. And in some of these cases, I think one of the main worries, is if you have a truck driver that's been terminated and they come in angry and they're very emotional, that's one thing that you deal with these truck drivers. Sometimes, maybe even intellectually, that can be a challenge. Sometimes we have cultural issues if they're foreign born and English isn't their all kinds of issues with truck drivers. You and I had a unique issue, one in which our driver that we were preparing for a deposition, and I'd say a pretty high stakes case, not only had some emotional issues due to the accident, but also has some pretty significant physical issues because he's also injured in the accident. So can you talk a little bit to our audience about the uniqueness of that type of situation? And hindsight is 2020. We learned a lot from this, but maybe how you approach this case a little bit differently than others, knowing that the driver had those two issues, and maybe some of the things that you did early to try to start off on the right foot.
Yeah, absolutely. It certainly was a learning process with this particular driver. And one thing that I feel like we did well was starting extremely early, identifying these issues with both the physical and likely emotional challenges that perhaps were going to play into prepping this driver for his deposition. You certainly can't start the week before, not even a month before. I think we started having conversations 6 to 8 months before this deposition actually happened. And by conversations, I mean beginning the prep process with the driver. So you have to start way earlier than you likely normally even would if you are even, super proactive. And then also making sure through the deposition process, when you're prepping them, you are continually checking in with this driver to see how they're doing, both from their physical and their emotional injuries that they may have as a result of the collision.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So a very early start. Talk about, because I think with any case, with any witness, what witnesses tell me is, I want this out of my life. I'm not thinking about this. I'm doing everything I can to distract myself. And then my email, my text, my phone starts lighting up from an attorney. And, it's not a positive thing when an attorney's calling you. So, particularly with this situation, again, we had somebody that had some pretty significant emotional reactions from the accident, also had significant physical injuries and pain, and going to physical therapy. We'll talk about that a little later. But on those initial calls, talk about how you really got to feel out these drivers, because sometimes you get a lot of pushback. You get some of that emotion. Maybe they want to pretend like this is not happening. Can you kind of go over kind of your tactics on those first couple of calls, again, to get the ball rolling in the right way and not get the driver, defensive or angry at you, because we all knew this was moving forward regardless of whether he liked it or not.
Yeah, so I think, initially in those first few times you contact the driver, you really have to take the time to build rapport. And sometimes that just includes letting them vent about what happened. Potentially they may not be employed by the trucking company any longer. If there were criminal charges, there may be strong feelings of either still continuing through that process or the way that process was resolved. And so sometimes it's just being a good listener and letting them, get whatever off their chest that they need to, and continually to reassure them that you're on the same team, you have the same interests, and that you're going to be with them through the entire process. Now, of course, there's unique situations where maybe that won't happen, but if that's the case, building that rapport to let them know that you're there and you're not going anywhere, and you're going to make sure that you're walking step by step with them through the process, that can be really reassuring to them.
Yeah, to say, hey, we've got a team for you. We're here for you, and we're more than just attorneys. We're here to help you if you need to vent and things like that. Now, I think that's a critical part of this process that oftentimes gets rushed. And then the defense counsel does not develop that bond with the defense team. and that can lead to disaster down the road. Can you talk a little about, in this particular case, we'll go over kind of the general kind of case facts, about how us developing that bond, because remember, we're especially early on in this prep and training process, we're asking some pretty tough questions, like about the driver's past. Have you ever been arrested? Have you ever had other legal? And these are questions you absolutely have to have just radical trust and openness and honesty. And some of these things are difficult. Can you talk about that process and how with this driver and with others, you have to form that trust, because you're going to be asking these pretty difficult questions. And if you don't get the honesty, and like in this particular case, sometimes on session 3, you get one answer, and then in session 5, you're getting more information. Can you just talk about that process?
Yeah, I think, the punchline is, in this particular case, we were asking those hard questions, but the answers we were getting in some of the initial sessions weren't the same as we got in the later sessions. And the answers in the later sessions are the ones that we absolutely needed to know, because those were the ones that were completely forthcoming. So we could do what we could to make sure that our witness was fully prepped for that. But to answer your question, how do you get there? It really goes back to building that rapport. So in this particular case with Bill, obviously with your assistance, we would spend a significant amount of time checking in on his physical and emotional well-being at the beginning of every meeting. And sometimes that would take an hour or more, things that typically you would just skip over. But that's really where we built the rapport, and we're able to learn the information of a lot of the struggles that this driver was going through, so that we could best try and help set him up for success in his deposition down the road. And we would do these check-ins every single session at the beginning. Sometimes you would do them again after lunch. I'm sure we'll get to this, but we would show him something in evidence that would be triggering for him. So then we're having to, check in again. But because we went through that process and took that time, we were able to build that rapport that we needed to with him, to not only help him address some of these struggles he was having post-collision, but also get honest feedback and answers for some of these very difficult questions.
Yeah.
Tell us about your criminal past. Have you ever been arrested? What other challenges have you had with other trucking companies and different things like that?
Yeah, it's crucial. And I can tell you, after 20 years of doing this, emotional barriers are the number one barrier to success with your witnesses. In a lot of these cases, if I get called in late, the defense attorney will tell me ahead of time, like, I'm not getting anywhere. This person is not listening to me. They don't care about the process. They're indifferent or they're apathetic. And then I come in, and like that, we're starting to see improvements. And the defense attorney is like, how in the hell did you do that? I said, well, I've assessed and removed the emotional barrier that obviously you didn't bother to ask about, or you didn't really dig into. And then, because you're not going to be able to make any progress with the witness if those barriers are there. And if they're not going to tell you about the barrier because they don't trust you, that's going to be a problem. So we took baby steps with this witness, and it was really, really important, but it did set up an environment. And again, like you said, at the beginning of every session and even intersession, we kept repeatedly assessing that. So if an emotional barrier or trigger, came up, we could deal with that. And that's a lot of work. That's a lot of work. It's oftentimes skipped, and that's where a lot of failure occurs. So Brenda, can you kind of just set up kind of the general, because this is a pretty common issue in transportation litigation, this type of accident, kind of set up the case facts, and then we'll kind of go through, what we did in our training to get the best outcome, really possible given the situation.
Yes, like you said, it's something that we routinely see in the trucking industry, where on a freeway or an interstate, traffic has slowed or stopped due to some incident, accident, construction up ahead. And unfortunately, our driver did not slow or stop at the same speed that the rest of traffic was. So rear-ended the vehicle in front of him that caused a chain reaction that led to some pretty significant injuries for the other drivers as well as our driver. And, unfortunately, there was some pretty strong evidence that showed what actually happened at the time of the collision as well.
Yeah. It was definitely a tough accident, and everything was on videotape, which is interesting because that is the emotional trigger. And you saw it. I mean, when we would show, and I think what we did again, and this is a technique I developed long ago, is I think the first time we did it, we just showed kind of still shots. Like we had the video and we didn't just, hey, play the video and watch you, crashing into people and causing catastrophic injuries. That's too much too early. So I know what we do is we put the video up there and we kind of jumped ahead still by still by still to kind of show it the first time and then a couple more times, and then until we actually played the video. And that was a really important part, I think of this process. Now, one of the things that you and I saw after playing the video was very triggering, which is totally expected. It was emotional triggering. And sometimes you get emotion as far as, sorrow and guilt and things like that. But sometimes you get more of a defensive trigger. And what we saw with our witness was, hey, wait, maybe this is not my fault. Like, look at this car. Like this car got in the way. It was this car's fault. Do you want to talk a little bit about how we had to work through that? And I wasn't expecting that. I don't think anybody was, but until you watch the video, to handle some of his defensiveness, to reel him back in to say, now, hold on here. We can't say that, and here's why.
Yes, to your point, it was extremely triggering. And when this individual went through something like this, there was not much recollection of what actually happened. And so when the video is shown, it's almost like that couldn't have happened.
Yeah.
The little bit that I do remember, it looked nothing like that. So looking for every possibility in this video of what could have happened that resulted ultimately in this collision. So looking at all of the external surroundings around the semi to see, okay, what did someone else do that maybe caused me to react the way I did? And some of these theories, to your point, were rather far-fetched, but rather than just say, there's absolutely no way that could have happened, walking it through step by step so he could reach the same conclusion, but in a much longer drawn out process to help him work through all of these reactions, emotional reactions that he had to seeing this event being played in front of him. I mean, honestly, at some points over and over and over again.
Which is important for desensitization, but also to keep their head straight. I mean, Brenda, just not wild guess, but give me how many times did we show them that video?
Over 100.
Yeah, I mean, we had to because we knew that's what Plaintiffs' Counsel was going to do. Now, okay, so not that, so this is difficult enough as it is, right? Now let's talk about what you had to do, and on two issues. One was we had to make sure we got him the proper medical care and physical therapy because he had a pretty significant, let's just call it a lower limb injury, right? And he took a pretty good shot to the head too, right? So we're dealing with that, and we're dealing with a lot of pain issues. Talk about what you had to do to juggle making sure he was getting the right medical care so that he wasn't coming into his sessions overwhelmed with pain, which, by the way, he did many sessions. And then also the massive struggle we had with trying to get a tough truck driver the actual psychological treatment / support that he needed.
Yes, there were a lot of variables going on here.
Yes,
so, I mean, it went back first and foremost to building rapport with this driver and letting him know that we were on his side. We were all on the same team, and we were going to do what we could to help him through this. So, yes, it was, obviously being an advocate for him, but also when you're doing the check-ins and he's talking about his physical injuries and his pain, giving him, helpful suggestions in terms of, well, have you done this? Maybe you should follow up with this person. Have you talked to your doctor about this? And just, reminding him that unfortunately, these injuries aren't cured overnight and it will take some time. But as it would relate to the physical injuries, also setting the proper parameters around his deposition to make sure that, he wasn't sitting longer than he needed to and whatnot. And we'll probably come back to that. But then on the emotional injuries, you hit the nail on the head. You have, your stereotypical truck driver. I'm fine. I don't need any help with my mental health. And so really working through that. And, at some point, what becomes helpful in this process is not only to have Bill, someone with your training involved, but also not being afraid to pull in outside professionals as well, whether that's additional healthcare providers for his physical injuries, or maybe a psychologist or psychiatrist, so he can be evaluated to see if there are more significant underlying issues that obviously I'm not qualified to diagnose or treat. But then the challenge becomes, if they are not willing to go seek that additional help that you think that they might be needed, doing what you can with obviously the training or tools that we have to be able to help them work through the process. And again, that goes back to starting as early as possible to make sure that you have time to identify these potential issues, and then being able to do what you can to hopefully help the driver through them.
Yeah. So in our instance, he was accepting all the physical medicine things that we were, he was pretty adherent to them as far as physical therapy. Did have a lot of pain on some days, so we would check with that. And just like the Real Depth, the way we set it up, we took a lot of breaks during our prep and training sessions to let him walk around, let him stay loose. On the psychology stuff, as you recall, very early on this process. Now, again, I don't have a patient-provider relationship with these people. I have a consulting relationship through you and your law firm. So, but it was pretty obvious through my checklist of which by the way, this happens in a lot of these cases. Of the 10 things, the 10 symptoms of PTSD, he checked the box on 7 of them. I mean, it was pretty obvious. Yet denied that he was having any problems, right? And so, and this is again not surprising. Didn't really want any treatment in that regard. Tough guy truck driver, so pretty obvious. So much of our sessions we had to visit and then revisit constantly his emotional status. Let him vent. So it slowed the process down. But that's what it was. And I will guarantee you this. If we would have rushed this process or cut the number of sessions in half, I think it would have epically failed at his deposition. Now, Brenda, I know that you were keeping a tally. I'm not sure if you still did. Total number of prep sessions with this driver. It was in the 20s, right? I mean,
way more than I have ever prepped anyone for deposition. That's accurate. It was in the 20s. But, a few comments on that. One, this was obviously a very unique situation that, I feel very strongly that all of this was warranted. But secondly, I mean, quite frankly, kudos to my client who saw where we were, what we needed to do, and the value in the process to be able to get him ready to sit for his deposition. I mean, obviously a lot of clients aren't going to be able to do that or willing to do that, but because we kept our client apprised and we had buy-in from our client, that's why we were able to do everything that we were able to.
Yeah. And that's huge. We had a client that was dedicating to doing this the right way, was willing to put in the investment to do that, whatever it was going to take. And I think that's really important. One other thing before we talk about the ultimate outcome here, what describe to me, because I'm talking about juggling multiple things here that really have nothing to do with legal stuff, right? And this happens a lot in these cases where you have a driver that feels terrible that this happened, and that's what ours did. And the kind of fear that maybe the driver has about how ownership feels about them now, right? And there was a challenge here, because I think a lot of drivers are like, the company hates me now, right? They want to hang me out to dry. They want to blame me for everything. And then you have an owner that obviously is not happy the driver got into an accident, but is caring and does want to. And there's in this case and other cases, maybe a gap in the understanding. And how did you bring these two parties together to get them on the same page so that your driver is not worried day in, day out? Everybody hates me. I'm a terrible person. the company's rejecting me. They're going to hang me out to dry. How did you eliminate those issues?
Yeah, there was definitely the feeling by the driver that he let the company down, and particularly the owners. And so again, during the process, I could reiterate to him what I knew that the owners truly felt. But what was really most impactful was to have an opportunity for the driver and the owners to sit down face to face and have that conversation, and to reassure the driver, again, the things that we were already telling him, but we're on the same team. Bill, to your point, obviously our preference would be not for this to happen,
Yeah.
but it unfortunately did. We will get through this together. We're on the same team. And we actually did that because this prep was so lengthy at a couple different important junctures or times during the prep. And they really, that was way more impactful than hearing it from me or hearing it from someone else. To hear it directly from the owners face to face certainly helped the driver kind of move past some of those strong feelings that he was having.
Yeah. So communication, get everybody on the same page. I know we put a lot of work into that. And that was another important part of it. So as you can see, and we're going to talk about what happened in the depth next, and talk about generally the outcome, because in this particular case, it was not one of these, hey, this driver has potential to do great things in this. No. This was we need to get to the other side of this minefield without stepping on multiple landmines to just, keep our head above water, just a survival. That's what type of depth this was, because it was a bad case and a tough witness and a very competent plaintiff attorney. So we just try and get through the other end. But it's very clear, and again, it's not going to happen on all cases, but you need to figure out the hoops that we jumped through, and the effort that, this is a monumental effort that was very complex, required an extraordinary amount of time for this particular situation. And I think the problem that I see often is that some defense counsel don't figure that out until they're right before the dep, and they're like, oh shit, like, man, my guy's got psychological problems. Oh man, my guy's really hurting, physically from the pain. And you get to the dep and the wheels come off because you haven't put in all that work up front. And that's a very difficult position to be in, but we put in the work. So kind of generally tell us, how we did during the dep, some of the things that you did, particularly calling for breaks and stuff like that, and what the kind of general outcome was.
Yeah. So to your point, we had to kind of readjust our expectations of the deposition to know that this was not going to be the best deposition that we have ever seen. But again, our goal was to avoid the landmines. We knew there could potentially be a few missteps along the way. Those were expected. But again, relying on the prep and what we had done to get us to that point. So we had set up some expectations as it would relate to the deposition with plaintiff's counsel ahead of time, in terms of the length of the deposition, how frequently we would take breaks and whatnot. Particularly, that was driven by his physical injuries. So making sure that that's set up ahead of time. And so you're not trying to suddenly take frequent breaks during the deposition and then having to deal with whatever reaction you may receive from plaintiff's counsel. But ultimately, his deposition went as well as we were hoping for or expecting.
Yeah.
I'm sure there were a few minor missteps along the way, but ultimately it did not have any adverse reaction on the case. And because of the prep that we put in, over these various months, he performed as we expected, which was the most that we could hope for or expect from him, given all of these variables or factors that we were trying to juggle during his deposition.
Yeah, it was tough. And to get there, and again, we're not saying you have to do all of this on every single case. We're not saying that, but I think an appropriate assessment of the situation and the witness and building that trust to really know what you're dealing with is key. And if you don't do that really thorough assessment up front, some of the stuff's going to come back to haunt you. And it could come back to haunt you, not just right before the dep, during the dep, where your driver's saying stuff and you're like, what the hell is that? Right.
Now, never heard that before. Yeah. Exactly.
Now, one of the crucial parts of this, and I'm going to move on, is the two real issues we had in our prep sessions, and we knew were going to be major issues during the dep, but we did have some control over it based on how we set it up and the ability to take more frequent breaks, was a combination of fatigue and pain. And I remember during our mock questioning sessions, it was frustrating because you could see him physically wear down and then mentally wear down. And he would start saying really bad stuff. And remember, I mean, there's a couple times I would, I'd be like, stop, what do you, stop, what are you, I'd yell at him, right? And I felt bad. I'm like, what are you doing?
We've never heard that
Like,
before. Where did that come from?
What are you doing? And you could just see the hands on the face and just the physical wearing down. So we knew that was going to be an issue. And by the way, with any witness, trucking or not, you get a witness, I mean, pain messes up cognition. Okay. Fatigue really, I mean, I wrote a paper on this, right? I mean, it messes up cognition. You got pain and fatigue. The ability of your witnesses to think straight is not going to be for an extended period of time. And so what we learned very quickly and set up our prep sessions was that, hey, this guy's got about 30 minutes. And after 30 minutes of sitting there, the pain sits in, and then the fatigue, right, of dealing with the pain and dealing with the questions is a big deal and a huge factor here. And we were able to, deal with that, set up the breaks the right way, get a positive outcome. And again, remember, positive outcomes can be defined differently on a case-to-case basis. And it sounds like we had one here. I think that of my 20-year career, I spent more time with that witness, with you.
Same.
And we did it. And we did it. But it's just but I think the general point here is, regardless of this particular case, the more effort that's put up, in preparation, most likely the statistical odds of good things happening during the dep is up there. And if you're waiting too long, or your client's telling you, that's why I think you need to talk to your clients to talk about the importance of this. And we were fortunate that our client got it, right? Our client got it. Some clients don't get it. They just want come on, toughen up, right? Toughen up, right? Well, this is not, it doesn't work like that. I wish it did. But it doesn't work like that. So it was a pleasure working with you on that case, and we've had other cases before. And I can't wait. I can't wait till the future ones. Now let me shift issues, because I've brought up your name and your firm several times on the podcast. So it's about time you finally got on the podcast. And there's this controversy over this cracker issue. Now this came up, and Steve Wood and I talked about this. Now, the Triscuit is the superior cracker in the Triscuit in the cracker world. I mean, Triscuit, they're the Georgia Bulldogs of crackers.
I mean, if you like cardboard, yes, they are by far
no.
superior to all other crackers.
The olive oil and rosemary Triscuit cracker is the best thing going on. And you voted Ritz, right?
Well, okay, remember,
cheese and crackers, Brenda. This is not complicated.
Well, hold on. It was cracker. You didn't say that there would be toppings. It depends.
Who eats crackers without toppings? Who just sits there and eat crackers? No one does that.
Who eats crackers everywhere? The whole topping.
Cheese and crackers. And your Nebraska something tells me in your Nebraska pregame parties, you're gonna have some cheese and crackers. And are you actually gonna put Ritz out there for your neighbors and friends to come over?
We don't mess around with crackers.
You just go right to okay, so it's just an Omaha thing? You just have big chunks of meat?
Yep. I stand by this if you're doing plain crackers, the Ritz all the way. If it's like a conduit for some toppings or something, then I don't know, maybe the cardboard wins, but,
okay, so
I stand by my answer.
Here. Okay, so you're wrong on that. So I'm going to put a big X right there. And the next one, with chicken, are you okay with chicken wings in Omaha? Can we go down that road?
I mean, come on. We can talk about them if you want.
We can talk about them. And if you're going to have ranch or blue cheese, which one's superior? It's a very simple question, counsel.
You are by far in the minority with your blue cheese. It's ranch all the way.
Oh, okay. So you're 0 for, I'm writing this down. Okay. So you're 0 for 2. All right. So that's Bill 2, Brenda 0. Okay.
Put it to the listeners. I think the listeners will be supportive of my
No. I got emails about how great Triscuits were after that episode. So I'm just going to keep going down the list because I want to get to know you more, Brenda. Okay. So sandwich. You're making a sandwich, right? You have your choice, ham or turkey. Which is superior?
Well, why can't we do both?
Because you're forced into a decision. I'm going to object. Move to strike. Your answer is not responsive. You're forced into one or the other.
C, both.
You can't do that. You can't do that. Okay,
Turkey,
so say
turkey.
Okay, okay. Ding, 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 ding. All right. All right, Brenda Smith, 1 point. Finally, you got on the scoreboard. I thought we were going to go through. I thought this was going to go through and you're going to get 0. Okay, now on said sandwich, you're forced into a decision. Mustard or mayonnaise?
Both.
Smith, you're killing me. You can't. I'm just telling you. It comes with one or the other. Yeah, it's one over here. You have to pick one. Oh, okay. So we got she's 1 correct, 3 wrong. Well, this kind of looks like Nebraska's opening schedule, actually. 1 and 3.
Ouch.
Okay.
Ouch.
Here we go. I got 2 more for you. Okay.
Okay.
Hey, and don't say swirl. You're forced into the decision. It's vanilla or chocolate ice cream. Give it to me, Brenda.
Vanilla.
Okay. Ding, 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 ding. Wow, you're on the board again. All right. Two. You're 2 yeses for you. You only got 3 wrong. Now you can tie this. You can actually finish 500 here and save yourself and your personal and professional reputation with this last question. Coffee, black, or you're putting cream and or sugar in it?
Oh, definitely black.
Oh, there we go. Ding, ding, ding. Congrats. Okay, you finished, 500. You got half the questions right. So because my family, wife and they put all this junk in it. It's not even coffee when they're done with it.
It's like your Triscuits. After you put all the toppings on them, it's not Triscuits anymore.
Now, exactly. Well, I thought this was a great episode and really, highlighted, well, a couple of things. Number one, witness prep and training is so important, number one. But also, and not to toot my own horn here, but I do think on some of these matters, it's important to have a consultant because of the, psychology training, clinical psychology, neuropsychology, because there are some of these things that as defense counsel, you may not be able to detect, or you may not be able to dig as deep as somebody like me to really find out what's going on with the witness. Because the more you know, the better you can prep them. Because the last thing that you want is a surprise in the middle of the deposition with your witness saying crazy things. And then it turns out, they had some anxiety over some topic or some issue. They never shared that with you because either you never asked or they never, they didn't trust you or something like that. So, all right. So
yeah, absolutely. I agree. You obviously brought a different skill set and qualifications that the defense team couldn't. So it was a great team effort to be able to get him fully prepped for his deposition.
Okay, so let's finish. So if Brenda Smith was not an attorney, what would you be? Was there something else before law? Like I was very big into sports medicine and physical therapy. So if law school didn't work out, like what was Brenda Smith gonna be?
I was one of those people that thought I was always going to go to law school. And fortunately, once I figured out what that meant, I still wanted to go. But if you're going to force me into an answer,
yes, I am.
I think I probably would have been a vet.
Well, I tell you what, downstairs, I'm going through right before this podcast, by the way, which is why I'm so energetic. I'm going through the credit card bill with my wife because we do that once a month because I have to look at, okay, what bullshit charges are on here. My kids like Chick-fil-A, and I scream at my kids. And then I start to see the vet charges. Brenda, you just be rolling around in cash right now. We'd be doing this podcast on your yacht. Is what we'd be doing if you went
could have been.
I'm just handing them over bonus checks. It's just this is all they do. I got 3 pets. They just multiply that out. Wow. I don't know. That would have been. I would tell my kids, hey, go to vet school. Would you tell your kids go to vet school? I would.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. So finish up. Give us an introduction of the Dvorak Law Firm. You guys are in Omaha. Tell us about the firm and the types of cases that you guys tend to work on.
Yeah, absolutely. Dvorak Law Group was founded about 8 years ago. We split off from a larger firm here in Omaha, 6 of us. Since then, we've grown to over 40 lawyers, 5 different locations, full service business law firm. But particularly for litigation, we represent all types of businesses or industries, and then also do some pretty significant estate, probate, and trust disputes as well. But full service business firm can handle anything any of the businesses would need.
It is a fantastic law firm that I have worked with multiple times, and I look forward to the next time. Brenda Smith, thank you so much for coming on. This was
Thanks so
fun.
much. Happy to be here.
Definitely going to have you back on, because we're doing more panels where I can get you and a couple other people on and discuss, current issues. This is the only podcast of its type, and so we want to get all this information out there. Help the
Absolutely.
defense bar. And to our audience, thank you for participating in another edition of the Litigation Psychology Podcast. We'll see you next time.